Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up Football. I am Aaron Chow, accompanied by my co-host John Harris. As always, we are back today to make our Week 7 picks against the spread for the NFL / bets. Once again, quote unquote quotes around the bets because it's not real money. Because thank goodness it isn't. Because you haven't been following along in regards to the money this season. We are still in the negatives. But last week was a positive week for us in every fashion, or I was even bit positive for you in both ways, both record and money wise. So let's see if we can, keep that momentum collectively, or maybe one of us will. But in regards to overall record against the spread, John 42-50 on the season. So once again, just hovering under 500. I am one game behind him at 41-51, and then money wise going into this week, John, you're at negative 2,380, and I'm at negative 1,850. So small deficit, and we'll see if any ground will be made or status.
We're actually at negative 780 and negative 250.
Oh, is it already? Oh, my bad. You're right.
Yeah, that line right there is technically including the negative 1,600
for this week. Yeah, I was already thinking he would catch out. So sorry, let me correct that. Yeah, John, it's better. Then we're almost at positives. John's at negative 780. I'm at negative 250. I'm also, I feel like at this point, usually, especially at least me, if you had better years, I also just am in the negative that much usually.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We were prior to last week. We both had a nice little come up. So
yes, thank goodness. Shout out to the favorites for basically converting for us. Usually that's. I probably should, I do the whole season stats thing. I probably should try it. I'll try and see if I can, because I wonder how many. I feel like when we put big money, it's on a favorite that we feel good about. I feel like it's rarely on a underdog, but I may have to check that. But anyhow, let's dive into the games for Week 7. Only 2 teams on bye this week. It is going to be the Bears and John's Cowboys. So we'll not be talking either of those, but the rest of the league is, of course, on schedule. Start with Thursday, of course, as it is the Sean Payton Bowl, John, in a sense, as him and his Denver Broncos are favored by 2.5 on the road going to New Orleans, like I just mentioned, on Thursday nights. Obviously, Spencer Rattler will be quarterback for the Saints. No Derek Carr, no Taysom Hill either. And it sounds like Olave's already been ruled out, as well as Rashid Shaheed. So, kind of a decimated Saints team here. Who are you going with here, John, and for how much?
I'm going to be going with the Denver Broncos. You obviously just listed off a lot of those injuries, and I just kind of wonder where the Saints' offense is going to come from. We know that Alvin Kamara can do some stuff, but if he's the only one, then they're going to be incredibly one-dimensional. The Broncos' defense has shown in certain matchups, like specifically that Jets game comes to mind, when they can force the opposing team to be one-dimensional, and that one, I believe they completely took Breece Hall and Braylon out of it, and the Jets' passing attack wasn't really working, because at that point, Garrett Wilson and Rodgers were still not on the same page, and Garrett Wilson and Rodgers are a significant upgrade over what the Saints have. So I'm sitting here thinking, Breece Hall, incredibly talented running back, Denver took him out of the game. Can they do the same thing with Alvin Kamara? And if they do, I see no reason why Denver can't win this game. I mean, the Saints, we sort of talked about it, in our reactions. Really strong start to the season, but it was against the Panthers and it was against the very porous Dallas defense. Ever since, it's been, that close game against Philly, and then some games in which, not so close, and they were able to be run on, So I wonder if, do the Broncos, go back to the heavy running usage for McLaughlin, for Javonte Williams, even getting a steam involved, like we saw a couple weeks ago when they were running it pretty heavily. So I just think matchup-wise, with all the injuries the Saints have right now, with, clearly some of the stuff that the league has figured out after those first 2 weeks in terms of how to slow them down, I think Denver, honestly, is a solid favorite here. And so for that reason, I'm taking the Broncos, but I'm only going to be putting 50 on it because it's Denver and they still scare me.
Yeah, I'm actually in complete agreement with you for both pick and money wise. You kind of hit the main points on the defense that I was concerned about. Just to add Vance Joseph to very creative, one more creative defensive minds. So I think it's just tough for Spencer Rattler. We saw it a bit last week. They only had really that second quarter but we talked about it too. That was kind of aided by the 2 interceptions that they got in very favorable positions there, the Saints. So yeah, just I think it's going to be a lot to handle all the creative stuff that the Broncos do. On the flip side, like you mentioned, especially without the wide receivers and the skill position, and Kamara last few weeks as a Kamara owner hasn't been as efficient, hasn't been as great for him. I know that's because they've just been dealing with injury, unfortunately, just a real thing in a sense. So and then on the other side, hoping that the Denver offense has been good enough, and that's the only thing that scares me. Probably why we're both putting 50 here, just because we've mentioned like they haven't really got the running game going. Like every game feels like a struggle for them offensively. So, but this is very fitting of a Thursday night game. It feels like this is definitely one that we won't be, won't be highly rated. I don't know. We'll see. But I just feel like it's definitely be a defensive struggle nonetheless. But we're both going Denver, both putting 50 on the Broncos to cover the 2.5 points on Thursday night. So